I am continuing with the Lovecraft short stories. I've just finished probably what is my favorite one, which makes sense because it was Lovecraft's favorite one, and the one that, if people know him, tend to say that this is probably most often the one people say that they like out of Lovecraft's work. And it has nothing to do with his old one's mythology or anything like that. And it's The Color Out of Space. If any of his short stories deserve being remembered, it probably is this one, because it does something so different with an alien invasion that even modern science fiction writers generally are unable to do. A lot of times it's so unique in that way that they recently made a movie of it that had Nicolas Cage in it. That's probably as good as you're going to get with a movie adaptation, because it is just such a hard concept to film. Seems like it's such a hard concept to be able to turn into something. And because of that, I would say they probably did as best as they could with that movie. But The Color Out of Space is an alien invasion movie of a bizarre kind. It has to do with this reservoir is being made, and this guy comes in and is surveying. And he's surveying so that this reservoir, they're going to flood everything. And while he's surveying, he finds this area that's called the Blasted Heath. And it's kind of this... Lovecraft liked to write about the boondocks of Massachusetts, basically. And this particular area is backwoods, and when he's there surveying, this dude finds this area that just seems very odd. It's very devoid of color, very devoid of life. It seems very just strange. And there is a well in it that it's nighttime when the man's there, and it has a really, really odd look. And he said something was wrong with that well. Like, it looked weird. Something looked weird about the whole thing. And as he's there asking questions about different things and really unsettled by this area, the locals say, oh yeah, that all happened during the strange days. You need to talk to this farmer named Amy, that you need to go out there, and he knew everything that happened because he lived the closest to the family that this happened to, and their farm that used to be there. And they said that he'll tell you all about it. So he goes out to this farm and talks to this farmer named Amy, who knew the gardeners who used to live there. It was Nahum Gardner and his wife and several sons. What had happened, a meteorite had shown up, and it was made a very odd consistency of stuff. A bunch of professors came, did some experimenting on it. They found the consistency of the stuff that this was made out of was very strange. It heated up and then disintegrated. They talked about it kept like getting smaller and smaller, and they couldn't figure out where it was going or what was happening to it. And they talk about it just sort of disintegrating into nothing. So they go back out to the meteorite again to get another sample, and when they're poking around on the meteorite, they find this kind of globule of something in it that one of the professors sort of pokes open, and it lets loose this sort of gaseous type of thing. And they don't think much of it, and they get their stuff and leave, do more experiments, can't really come to any sort of conclusion about what this thing is. Meanwhile, the gardeners are continuing to live there on their farm, and Nahum talks about his crops have done better than they've ever done before in the area where this meteorite landed, but the weird thing is that the food is not edible. Like, it's huge amounts of apples and pears and all this sort of stuff, but when you try to eat it, it tastes terrible. It doesn't taste good. They're large and look great, but when you start trying to eat them, there's something wrong. They're very off. So he can't use any of that crop. He moves his cattle because his cattle are starting to act and look weird too, that have been grazing in this area, so he moves them. Then his family members start acting weird. His wife is the first one who starts acting really, really strange. And they keep talking about that there's this sort of odd thing going on with the farm, that there's like glowing happening with the farm. There's this weird color that keeps shining over the well, but it's not a human color. And that's the thing about the color out of space. They can't really describe it. They don't really know what this is. And they try to talk about this color, but it has like this weird shimmer, and it has this like glossy look, but you can't really describe it because it's not really a human. There's no human reference for it. So the gardeners continue to live there and continue to become more and more paranoid, and people keep visiting them less and less because there's something really, really off with the farm. They talk about the trees and things keep like moving with no wind. It's very strange. There's bugs in the area that just don't look right, that are showing up and looking really weird. The wife of Nahum eventually, she's just completely becomes unhinged, and he puts her up in the attic because he's trying to keep her from hurting herself. They have the boys there. The boys start acting weird too. Two of them go missing. One dies apparently in a horrible way because Nahum comes running to Amy's farm, and he says, something's happened to the one son, and they go and look, and he's like disintegrated kind of by that point. So Amy's really freaked out, and he doesn't want to go there anymore, but eventually he's like, no one's seen them for a little bit. I need to go check on them. So he eventually goes to the farm again to check on what's going on, and Nahum is on his last leg, and he's like, go check on my wife, So Amy goes up to the attic, and they don't really describe it, which is probably the best thing in Lovecraft. That is his best talent, is he doesn't describe. He does describe, but doesn't describe things. And because of that, you don't have a real sense of what you're looking at, but you do have a sense of the kind of wrongness of the situation. He goes up to the attic, and there's something just horrible. The wife has turned into something just horrible up there, which he kind of does and doesn't describe. And you get sort of this impression that Amy, she's still alive, but she's something weird. So Amy goes in, and seems like he kills her, and then goes downstairs to see what's happened with Nahum. Nahum has died by this point and is like disintegrating. It is very strange. And Amy talks about this like misty cloud keeps going from place to place. He keeps seeing this misty cloud. So he then has to go contact people and all these people have died. What do we do? There's got to be an investigation. So the police and all these people come out to the farm. And as they're out there at this farm, it's getting nighttime, and Amy's like, we need to go. It gets worse at night. We really need to go. And they're like, no, we really need, all these guys who aren't from this area are just like, yeah, we need to look around. We have to, this is weird. We find what's happened. And while they're there and then the night is coming on, they start seeing this weird color everywhere. It's like coming out of the well. It's coming out of the trees. It's coming just from everywhere. It's like this glow. It's this weird light. And they start freaking out because they're like, okay, something is really wrong. The horses start freaking out. Everything just is, they're like, this is going critical mass here. Basically, everything is happening. They'd already that day found the bodies of the boys in the well, at least two of the boys. They had found in the bottom of the well. They'd found animal bones in the bottom of the well. Something's living in the bottom of the well. They pretty much come to that conclusion. There is something in the bottom of the well living there. And as this is all happening, they're like, we need to go. It is critical mass time. We are well past our due date here. We need to go. So they all rush out and make a run for it. And they see this, Amy says he turns around and he sees this light sort of thing go shooting up at the sky. But he sees this other part kind of like go back down into the well. So the implication is the alien entity goes back to wherever it came from. It has sucked the life out of what it could in the area, and it has now headed back to wherever it came from. But Amy is the only one who sort of realizes that there's still something left in the well. There's still something wrong with that well there. And he talks about that everybody leaves the place. The whole place is just disintegrated and won't grow anything, and that is why it's the blasted heath. And the locals all refer to this as the strange days when this whole weird thing happened. And the narrator's like, I'm never drinking water out of that reservoir. Like, good luck with the reservoir that you've got there, because it's going to put that area underwater, but the well is going to be underwater too. And he's like, maybe that will fix it, but something is still really wrong. Because the way Amy talks, that the alien entity, not all of it left. There's still something there. So that's the whole gist of the story of The Color Out of Space. I think the thing that is so unique about it is the fact that the alien is not humanoid. It's not even like the Alien movies, where that alien is insectoid kind of looking. It's not like other movies where you generally, when you have an alien, you have to have some sort of human reference for it. So they do make it look like some sort of concept of what a human would think something would look like. Lovecraft didn't. He made this something completely different. It is a thing. It is a entity that is basically a color. It's not even like an animal thing that we have a reference for. It's a color. It's a color that we couldn't even really define. There's not really any definition of what this alien thing is other than that. And the fact that it can absorb life forces. And that's what it seems to do. And it's very, very wrong in that way. Of course, this does kind of go along with Lovecraft's mythology sort of thing of there always being a bigger thing out there that we don't understand and we can't comprehend and does not mean well for us, is not friendly. And this is another one of those type of stories. The closest I could say you could kind of, in a more modern movie, make a connection is Event Horizon, because I don't think in that one you ever see the alien in Event Horizon. It just kind of manifests in different ways. It's kind of a thing too. It's not really a tangible, this is what this looks like. And because of that, it's kind of a very unique thing. And this one really does hold up. It's also the least of his stories that I would say has any sort of like racial bigotry overtones of any type. It's just a story about a family who lives in the woods or lives in the middle of nowhere and has this alien presence just kind of come and sort of ruin their lives. So this one really probably also out of his is probably the most unoffensive of any that I have read here, just because of that lack of Lovecraft's worst qualities in his writing. And this one really is an accomplishment. You really do stick through the whole story because of how strange the whole concept is and how unique the whole alien invasion concept is in the way that it's done. It's just kind of a special story on his, and I understand why this one was his favorite, because I do think he really grasped a concept here that sometimes I don't always get with his Elder God mythology. I'm in the middle of I'm towards the end of the Dunwich Horror right now, and it's the least favorite of the four that I've read, and he really is delving into his mythology in all of this, but it's dry. There's a dryness to it, and there's sometimes things with Lovecraft he does get that way a little bit. Call of Cthulhu could have been that way, but I did like the sort of puzzle atmosphere that he had with trying to match all three of these stories up and have that all go together. Color Out of Space is completely separate, and Rats in the Walls is kind of completely separate because it's more like a Poe story. But this one I would highly recommend. If you're going to read any Lovecraft, read The Color Out of Space. I'm going to agree with everybody else and say this is the one that if you want a starter pack for Lovecraft, read that one first. It's probably the best one of his, I would say, at this stage that I've found. the best thing he did and the best concept he came up with and the best maybe application, I think, of his cosmic horror. There's something out there that does not mean well for us and is unimaginable. And I'll get into that a little bit when we talk about the fact that, well, Lovecraft was an agnostic and this was all a counter argument to Christianity and stuff like that, and the fact that it negates religion and things. I don't think it does. I don't think it does in the way that he does things. I don't think what he's writing, I don't think cosmic horror necessarily negates religion in any way, shape, or form. I think it focuses on an aspect of religion more than negates it. It is kind of my thinking. And this one doesn't get into any of that, and that's why I think that one's one of his better stories. So that's my third one. I'm almost finished with Dunwich Horror, and I'll get to that one pretty soon. And that one's not going to be as favorable of a review, just because that one's not really my cup of tea of the four that we have read so far.